I'm working on this John Deere 110 garden tractor. I'm gonna clean it up, fix what's wrong with it, and display it at some local farm shows. This is part 6 of a multi-part series. In the last video, I worked on the steering gearbox, and put the main steering link in. Now I'm going to take off the tie rods. This jam nut's not doing anything, and this whole ball joint is loose. That's kind of hard to turn. I'm going to tighten it back up and spray some WD-40 on it. This one wasn't tight either. There's a lock washer on this one, so the lock washer was missing on that first one. There's no wrench flats on these original ball joints. And that's why you need them. This one's loose on there, and it's a left-handed thread. So this will be a left-handed thread. And it's not moving too good. I'm going to move it back where it was and wire brush the thing. Okay, I got it cleaned up and now it looks worse. Those threads are gone. Just stripped off of there. I'll bet it had something to do with being a left-handed thread. So that nut's not going to be any good either. I'd have to drag it across those threads to get it off of there. This tie rod's not usable anymore. I'm gonna have to get a different one. I found this piece of round stock that's the right diameter, and it's almost the right length too. I'm just gonna have to cut a little bit off. I have that piece of round stock in the lathe, and I'm gonna make some left-handed threads. First I square up the end. I'm taking just enough off to get rid of the saw marks. It looks like the old shaft had 1.5 inches of threads on there. So I'm going to touch my tool on the end of the part and move the tool in by 1.5 inches. That looks right, and I'll make a mark right there. The mark is just for reference, for a double check. I'm watching the travel indicator on the lathe to know when to stop. That didn't clean up all the way around. I'll make another pass. That silver band is where this carbide tool started digging in. I'm going to switch to a high-speed steel tool. It has a sharper edge and cuts better on this soft steel. There's just a little spot there that needs cleaned up. I'm going to take a little more, and I'm going to slow down the feed rate of the tool to get a better finish on the part. Now I need a chamfer on there where the threads start. This is the threading tool. The point is a 60-degree included angle, just like the bottom of a standard bolt thread. I'm going to make a little groove at this end so I have a place for the tool to start. It needs to be the same depth as the threads are going to be. Now I move the tool in to touch the part and set a 0 on my dial so I know my starting point. Add some cutting oil, and the first pass should just skim the surface. The thread pitch gauge shows this old one is 20 threads per inch. And now I line this gauge up with the scratch I made, and that verifies that my machine is set up properly to cut 20 threads per inch. Now I make multiple passes, taking a little bit at a time. This is the hard way to make a thread, but I don't have a left-handed threading die, and this might be kind of interesting if you've never seen it before. I'm going to run some emery cloth over that. And I'll try the part to see if it fits yet. It starts but don't go on there yet. Gotta cut a little more. Now I'm using a file to clean off the edges. Okay, that feels pretty good. I'm calling that done. Here's a left-handed lock nut too. That all looks good. Now I'm going to do the other end of the tie rod. It has normal right-handed threads, and I have a threading die for that, so it won't take as long. I still have to square up the end, true up the sides, and put a chamfer on it to get ready for the threads. Now I'm going to put some cutting fluid on there, and some more on the die where it's going to be working. Threading dies will go crooked unless you force them straight. On this lathe, I have a drill chuck with a flat face that fits the back of the threading die. So to force this die to stay square, I'm using my right hand to keep the drill chuck up against the threading die, while I use my left hand to turn the die. Once you get it on there about 4 or 5 turns, then it'll keep going in whatever direction it's pointed, whether it's straight or not. If you don't have a machine or a fixture to square up the die with, you're probably going to go crooked. Now I have a piece of hex stock in the lathe, and I'm going to make a left-handed nut. The easiest way to make a nut is to start with hex-shaped stock, because it's already got the 6 sides on it. This is 3/4 inch hex stock, so it'll fit a 3/4 inch wrench just like the original nut. On this first side, I'll face it off and add a chamfer on the outside. Now I'll drill a hole the right size. Always start with a center drill. That starts the hole in the right place. When drilling steel, the first drill usually walks around a bit and cuts oversize. So to get a hole closer to the exact size you want, drill it a little undersized first, then slow down the speed and drill with the finished size. Now the chamfer on the center hole has to be slightly bigger than the outside of the threads. Okay, there's the first half of the nut. Now I'll saw off the excess material. That looks okay. As long as I don't cut it too thin, it's still good. Now I have it in the lathe again. I positioned it square in the chuck using a dial indicator on the back side. That'll ensure that both sides are parallel. I'm going to take material off this side until it's the right thickness. The original nut measures from 313 to 317 thousandths, so I'll call that about 315. My new nut's 330 at the moment. I need to take off 15 thousandths of an inch. First I'll take off 10 and check it. Yep, now it's at 320. I'll take off another 5. And there it is at 315, same as the original nut. Now I need a chamfer on the outside. I stop it to see if the chamfer's touching the bottom of the flat yet, and I keep going until it does. Now a chamfer on the inside. The outside of this chamfer has to be bigger than the outside of the threads. Now I'm going to put threads in the hole. I don't have a boring bar with a carbide insert to put threads in a hole this size, so I had to make my own. This is a piece of high-speed tool steel, hand ground on a bench grinder to the proper shape and size to make a thread. This process is the same as it was on the outside, and I'm going to keep going until the tie rod screws in there. That one goes in there, but just barely fits. And my new one starts in there, but won't go in. I need to take out a little bit more. Now this one goes in, but it's tight all the way. The old one goes in and it's just a little bit looser. I'm going to take out a little bit more. Now that one goes in like it was made for it. This one was a little bit tighter before, and now it feels pretty good too. You can tell my new tie rod's a little bit bigger, but it's still a good fit. Here's the pile of steering parts that came off of this tractor. And here's the tie rods with new ball joints. And the old nuts and washers have been cleaned. That nut goes on for a while and then stops. I'm going to try a different nut. That one's going on good, so I'll have to work on that other nut. These lock nuts are still loose, so I'll check to see if they're in the ballpark. I'm going to move the steering wheel until it rests with the masking tape at the top. That's the center of the steering wheel travel. And then if I look at this tire, it looks pretty square with the frame right now. I'm going to go ahead and tighten it up where it's at. I'll fine tune them later when it's not on blocks. Always make sure both ends are lined up with each other. You should be able to rotate the rod back and forth on the ball joints. Okay, that's all tight. Remember that first nut I tried didn't go on all the way? Well, it turns out I have two of them like that, so I need to run a tap through them to get them cleaned up. Now I'm going to make sure the masking tape is at the top of the steering wheel again. And this one looks a little bit off. I'm going to move it around until the wheel looks straight and tighten up the lock nuts. That wraps up the steering for now, but I noticed this other problem that I wanted to fix before I forget. I put this regulator in a few videos ago. The rubber mount's letting it sag some, and this electrical terminal's getting close to the steering tube there. I'm going to take this terminal out and see if I can mount it upside down. No, the top interferes with the cover that way. It looks like I can bend this terminal right where it comes out from under this cover. Maybe it'll work. Okay, that looks good actually. The back of the terminal's not too close to the case. And now there's more clearance for it to move around and not get too close and touch the steering tube. Well, that's as far as I'm going this time, and here's what it looks like. It looks about the same as last time, but the steering system's a lot better. I think I'm ready to start looking at the engine next. Alright, that's it.